sclerosis. It is a motor neuron disease and therefore in some countries better known as MND. In the US, the disease is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease after a famous baseball player who died of ALS. ALS is a neurologic disorder that causes increasing muscle weakness and eventually paralysis, which, in most cases, is fatal. Our brain sends signals through our nervous system to make our muscles move. ALS affects the motor neurons that carry these signals. The neurons in the brain and the spinal cord degenerate and die, causing the muscles to gradually weaken and the brain to lose control over voluntary muscle movement. This leads to all sorts of problems, such as increasing loss of mobility in the limbs and difficulties with speech, swallowing, and even breathing. ALS is an irreversible and progressive disease. Patients usually die within 3 to 5 years after diagnosis, primarily due to failure of the respiratory muscles. Each year, 1 to 2 people per 100,000 are diagnosed with ALS. Scientists don't yet know how or why the disease develops, and unfortunately there is no cure or treatment today. It is currently only possible to slow down the progression of the disease. In other words, a lot of money is needed to fund ALS research. So, when you pour a bucket of ice water over your head, don't forget to also make a donation.
Okay, so we're back, and I need my glasses. Oh, there's the camera. Hi. Okay. So this is Tucker. This is Lauren, and Eloise is with her grandmother right now, but in the same room. I think she's a little overwhelmed with all of these people, but she's being super awesome. So, as I mentioned before, is that Tucker has been a teacher at Hills and Falls Nursery School for 13 years, right? 10. That's right.
It just feels like decades.
It feels like 13. Yeah.
It feels like
but
13.
It's 10.
Yes. It's fun. And you are now, you just finished up your last year, right?
Yes, I did. I just finished up in June, and I'm now retired.
Okay. Who knew you'd retire at 36?
Oh, man. I wish I had more in a pension, but, you know.
So what was it like for both of you, and individually and together, when you got this diagnosis and this devastating news?
Sure. So ALS was the furthest thing on my mind. I really thought that I had an old soccer injury on my left wrist or something else that was going on. And I had been on WebMD and thought I had all sorts of other things. And ALS.
Did you know what ALS was? Had you heard of it?
I had heard of it, but it just didn't ring on my radar that was what was happening to me. I mean, I don't know how you.
Yeah, it was the same. We had done the Ice Bucket Challenge literally 365 days before the diagnosis. We were in the backyard doing the Ice Bucket Challenge and going through the process of getting diagnosed. The worst thing we thought is potentially Parkinson's. And then, the diagnosis came and we were both floored. It was, especially because the typical age of someone when they get diagnosed is in their 50s. And here he was 33 years old. It was absolutely devastating.
I think, and for me, I think the real blow of the whole diagnosis was, I said, well, doctor, what does this mean? And he said, well, 90% of people diagnosed with ALS have 2 to 5 years to live. And I was 33 years old at the time and just trying
newly married.
Yeah, newly married and wanting to start a family. And just that news, that statistic is still to this day impossible to process. But I'm lucky. I'm 3 years in, and I'm still walking, talking, and breathing, and I feel blessed for that.
We all do. Yeah. How did your your family react. And I know you didn't tell people for a while. I certainly know how I reacted when you took me to lunch. I was like, oh, shoot, I know what's coming.
Yeah. Well, it was really hard telling family. I mean, having that pit in your stomach with just this news that is gonna absolutely like devastate your family. There's no segue into that. There's no proper pause in a
So, funny
conversation.
thing.
Yeah, right.
Fun fact here, you guys ever heard of ALS?
So I just remember sitting on my parents' porch and just trying to summon up the strength to be like, all right, listen, here's what's going on. I mean, it's and it's at this point it's all still, it's really a blur. But I mean, I just remember the fact of having to tell people was almost worse than getting the diagnosis, because we had time to process it. And so every time we would tell someone, it would get easier for us, but devastating for them. And I mean, I hated the bait and switch of inviting someone over for dinner to then tell them, this horrible news. It's just awful. It's awful.
But as I had said in my introduction, it felt to us, to the outside world who didn't see you every day, that it was really not happening. So, and throughout this time, before it did actually start to progress more, you were then having a different dinner conversation with people when you were announcing when Lauren was pregnant.
Yes. Yeah.
And so did you still feel things every day, or were you in denial, or just kind of blocking it, like, oh, it's not there yet, even though you actually did get very active with ALS 1, and were you kind of like, I'm doing this for everybody else because I don't think this is really happening, because I'm okay.
Yeah.
It's just my left arm. Like, I'm
Yeah.
good.
I mean, it was.
Loaded question, Leslie.
Yeah, that is a loaded question.
Sorry. All right. You want me to break it down?
No, that's fine. It was.
Sorry. Did you think about every day? Was it something that you thought about every day after the first initial blow, and you kind of got over that?
The stuff that really sticks with me about thinking about it, maybe not every day, but it was something that would crop up, like, is this going to be my last Christmas? Is this going to be my last Thanksgiving? The uncertainty of it. I mean, my progression is very, very, very slow, and a lot of people with ALS aren't that lucky. So it was, in the beginning, it was more of a nagging thing, like a frustration, because I was only affected in my left arm. And it was my left arm for a year and a half. So once I started noticing it move to my right arm, things got a little more dicey. My frustration levels got a lot higher, and it really got to the point where I couldn't do things on my own anymore. And that was really when it, became an issue for me,
And that's when it kind of, like, reality hit. Like,
Yeah. It was like, all right, this is it now.
And I think every day since the diagnosis, you've lived in the world where we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. So just do what we would normally do, or do more. There's no sense to limit ourselves or dwell on it or think about the negative. We actually have so much to be grateful and positive for. So,
and you did a lot that you could while you could.
Yeah.
You traveled a lot right away.
We did. We traveled a lot. We're still we move a lot slower as a family unit now, but we're still out there. We're getting out. We're doing our thing. You got to just keep on
just gotta go.
keeping on,
Yeah.
as they say.
That's so true.
Yeah.
That's so true. Um, so, in the past 3 years, um, how have things changed? You said for a year and a half it was just in your left arm, then went to your right. How are things now? And now, if you're in a different point where you said yourself that there's a lot you can't do on yourself, and you're very outspoken about it and very matter of fact about it, which must be so hard to admit things. How do you deal with that inside? Because the outside person, I'm sure, is much stronger than the Tucker inside, and you must have a lot of feelings, both of you. That. So I guess first start by, what can you not do? What is your life like now, and how do you both deal with it mentally, emotionally, and physically?
So now, I mean, if we just want to start listing the things that I can no longer do, we can go with that. But
Okay.
I need help in the shower. I can't shower myself. I need help eating. I can't drive anymore. I can't work anymore.
But this is only in your arms, so it's limited use. It's the limited use of your arms.
So,
you're still walking.
Well, I am walking. I have what they call spasticity in my legs, and that is involuntary contraction of the muscles. So what happens is, essentially, my legs are unbelievably tight all the time. So I walk slower. I don't have the ability to catch myself if I get off balance. So I've had some falls. And this, unfortunately, is all just the natural progression of the disease. My doctors tell me that my legs are still very strong.
That's good.
Which is amazing, but I mean, it's so it's really a matter now of just like being very diligent about stretching myself out and taking it slow, and realizing that even though I'm only 37 years old, I really need to take it slow and just be mindful of what I do, where I walk, when I step, things like that. So that was the list of things I can't do. What was the next part of that question, Leslie?
How do you deal with that
Mentally
and emotionally, and Lauren also, because your life has changed. You're double the responsibility of taking care of two people. The caretaker role is.
Do you want me to go first? Or do you want to go? All right. So I think, for me, one of the biggest things that I've taken away from all of this is just gratitude. We have so much to be thankful for, and I think that I have to remember that every day. And so I try to be grateful for everything that we have and all of our friends and family, and then. ALS is a very humbling disease. Pride goes out the window when your 34-year-old aide is showering you that you've only met 5 times. So there's
Forget your inhibitions.
It's very humbling, and falling down in public, like things like that, are all just it's what happens now, and I just have to try and take it one day at a time, and be able to laugh. I mean, that's the best thing, is just to be able to laugh and enjoy life. And I mean, I sound very positive now, and I'm in a great place today. But
you're also seeing how many
I got a lot of
people
friends
you've touched,
and family here, and it's great. But I mean, I have bad days, and I have really good days, and I'm lucky enough now to have way more good days than bad days. So I'm thankful for that.
Okay. And Lauren, so let me also just back up, because even though you've only been married for 5 years, you
Feels
guys,
like a lifetime.
well, because you have known each other pretty much a lifetime, like most of your more years than you've been alive. When did you first? How long have
We
you
met
first?
and started dating in 2006. It's a very long time.
So it's
Yes.
13. So that's 13 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a while.
And and I'm sure, like, who knew? I mean, you've grown up together, basically.
Yeah.
So so now you've gone from wife to mother and caretaker and wife.
Yep. Yeah, I think you had asked, how do you handle it? How do you deal with it? A lot of wine. No,
Good.
no.
And that's what it's all about tonight, too.
No, a lot of wine, a lot of whiskey.
A lot
No. No, that's only half true. No, honestly, humor. I mean, the day he was diagnosed, we were making really creepy, dark jokes, that
Little black
were
humor.
like, if anyone else had heard it in the moment, they would have been absolutely appalled. But that's just how we've always been. So, no sense in changing now. Just being present to what's going on, being grateful, being thankful. I mean, I'm a hot, blubbering mess right now, but
And I'm thankful for that.
hi.
I'm not.
We have Eloise, who's amazing, and she keeps us light and fun, and when we're down and out and just having a rough time, we just know that it can always be worse. It can always be worse, and we're very grateful and very thankful. And it might be a moment where we're frustrated with whatever's going on, but that moment passes and we're able to get through. And I think overall we're both very optimistic people, and we stay busy and we stay active, and we try not to let this slow us down too much. It does physically slow us down, but
Right.
we still get to do the
still
things
living
we do.
the life as
Yeah, you can't stop. I mean,
Right.
what else are we going to do? You can't just roll over and
Yeah.
give up.
We just adapt and change, and that's what we do.
Yeah, I think it's being present to the new reality, and our new reality is changing every day. What was our reality a month ago is not the same today, and it's going to be different a month from now. And just being able to adapt to that and be flexible and know that it is going to change, and just roll with it. Like, there's no sense in getting caught up in it and being, focused on that when there's other things to be focused on. Just deal with it and move on.
And it's kind of hard to say what would your reality be in a month, because
We have no
the
idea.
unknown.
We have no idea. I mean, the night
You
he
could
was
be the same today, a month from now.
correct,
And this
he
could
be-
slow
he-
down
he
again.
Could literally be the same today as 3 years from now, or he could be different. We honestly have no idea. The doctors don't really know.
Yeah.
It's not an incurable disease. It's just underfunded, and unfortunately, there's not enough research right now going on to find a cure. It's going to happen. We're very hopeful it's going to happen, in the
In
near
your
future,
lifetime, yeah.
and it's going to stop the progression. We're going to do the physical therapy, and he's going to be back to normal. And we're very hopeful and positive that is the case. But unfortunately, the night that he got diagnosed, we had no idea. We really, to hear that you have potentially 2 to 5 years to live, we had no idea what to expect. And so we were just like, screw it. We're just going to pedal to the metal and do everything we want to do. And we started a family. And
You're 4 years into your diagnosis now, right? Because it was July.
I'm 3 years diagnosed and 4 years with symptoms.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's great. That's great. I mean, I've also heard of people who have lived many years and still are.
Right. Yep.
So it is kind of unpredictable. So let's talk about the awareness of ALS, because you guys have gotten very involved
Yes.
to help promote awareness. What needs to be done? Like what's happening in that arena?
So, what needs to be done is people need to keep talking about it. People need to, every 5 years, keep the Ice Bucket Challenge alive. Go run the Falmouth Road Race for ALS1. Donate. Just learn about it. Learn about, people with ALS. We could be your neighbor. We could be your uncle, your brother. I mean, it could happen to anyone at any time. I mean, they call it, my version anyway, they call it sporadic ALS, and that just means just that. It just happens. So I think the big thing that we can take away from this is to just keep it in the public eye. Keep money funding, keep the ALS Association accountable for the money that's being raised. Keep putting money into these clinical trials and get the FDA to move and to approve some of these things that are showing promise. I mean, there are people getting better out there on experimental drugs right now. And so
In the U.S. or there's some stuff happening
in the
abroad?
U.S. In the U.S. And I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but I think that it's just important that we just keep pressuring these people that hold the cards and pressure them to make moves. I mean, we're terminally ill. I mean, this is a disease with no cure, and it is 100% at this point that if you have ALS, you will die from it. No one's beat it yet, but that doesn't have to be the case. And I think that if we can keep pressuring the people to move these things forward and to let us have access to experimental drugs, that's going to be the best way for us to possibly get better. I mean,
So there are some drugs now that are in trial that they're not ready to get approved yet, or they could. I mean,
Yeah, it's just that there's multiple phases that you have to go through, a lot of red tape that needs to take place, and so there's a number of drugs that are showing very promising signs, but due to regulations and FDA and things like that, they have to go through multiple phases before they can actually get approved and be given to the public or given to additional patients. So it's just unfortunately a matter of time, and we're hopeful that things can move quick. But yeah.
yeah. Also, I think that it's important that I don't know. I forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry, a
I
little
was killing
distraction
time.
there. You have a lot of donations coming in, and somebody needed the password to get in there. Okay, so what's the one thing as we wrap up what's the one takeaway? So anyone who's seen this, and we're going to have people share this and get the word out for ALS, for you, for everything. What's the one takeaway? What can somebody do today to raise awareness or to reach out to someone and
I'd say first do your due diligence and learn about what it is and how it affects people, because it does affect everyone, and you're essentially locked in your own body and you can't move, and just think about what that might be like. Go through a day without using your hand, tie it to your side and attempt to go through a day, get yourself dressed, eat, prepare a meal, drive, and that's just a portion. That's just one of them. Everyone is affected differently, and you don't really know what it's like to go through it if you're not experiencing it every day. So start with that, and then from there, to Tucker's point, just raise awareness, get out there, join the clubs, join the races. There's so many foundations locally here in Massachusetts as well as nationally, and just try to get the word out, and let's try to get some research and some of these drugs approved sooner.
I think also, right now, today, what anyone could do is go on Facebook and look up the organization ALS1. Look at it. Every month they have fundraisers, they have events, they have walks, they have Cinco de Mayo parties at bars. They have them, and just show up, just meet people, talk to people. It's so important that the awareness stays going and the momentum keeps moving forward with this, because they are very, very close, and we just need more. We need more help from everyone. And if we can do a little bit here, a little bit there, then why not? Go to a bar and support your local ALS chapter, ALS Association chapter. Look up ALS1, look up ALS TDI, the Therapy Development Institute. They all have fundraisers. They're all doing amazing things in the world of ALS. And I think if we can just keep these names in the headlines, then we'll get the money, we'll get the treatments, and we'll have the cure, and I'll get my boat.
You'll get your boat.
Yeah.
I told him that once he's cured, I'd buy him a boat and name it after his doctor.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's
I
really
look
pushing
forward
for
to
a boat.
christening it with.
That's right.
Yes, it might be a rowboat, just an FYI.
That's okay.
You'll have a motor.
It'll have a motor. You can still get a bottle of wine or champagne and
Smash it on
smash
the
it.
boat. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
Yep.
So I will be putting the links on, or someone will help me put the links on for ALS1 and ALS. ALS1, is that a local? And what is the money is raised and goes for research as well?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
ALS1 is local to Massachusetts.
Okay.
It was founded a few years ago, and we're very close with the founding family and the number of people that run the organization. So we try to raise as much money for them. And yes, that's exactly what it goes to. It goes to research. It goes to doctors. It is also going to go to another great organization, CCALS, so Compassionate Care ALS, which specifically focuses on providing families like us with donations of things that we need when progression changes, home modifications, wheelchair accessible vans, things like that. So a lot of the money goes to that. So it's not just researching to find a cure, but also to support people that are living with it right now and making sure that their life is
the
complete
wheelchairs and all that stuff, because
wheelchairs,
there's a lot.
lifts. I mean, that's why everyone's here right now, is to be able to provide us with the funding we need, because we do need to make some home modifications, and we will need a wheelchair, we will need a handicap van if things continue. So, yeah, it's just to help us prepare.
And that's what tonight is for as well. The money, as I mentioned, is being donated, and it goes directly to their family account that is set aside for medical expenses and their needs as this progresses.
Yeah, we're very fortunate right now with his progression being so slow. Our needs are on the whole spectrum very minimal, but a typical progression, it can cost anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 to care for somebody with ALS. At the late progression stages, 24-hour nurse care. I mean, the individual can't physically do anything for themselves, so it takes an entire community to do simple tasks.
And you're on one income now.
Yeah.
As of June. Yeah. So we will plan on the giving to keep giving beyond tonight, which is the purpose of this, is to raise awareness for our cause tonight and for ALS. And thank you so much for being in my life.
Thank you. We love you.
Thank you for doing all this. I mean, this is absolutely amazing. And again, I can't express my gratitude enough. This is amazing. Thank you.
It's incredible.
Well, it's like the least we could do. We're wrapping. Okay, people want to talk to you, not us. Okay, and we're done.
No doubt you've already heard of the Ice Bucket Challenge, and maybe you've participated too. But what do you know about the disease behind this challenge, known as ALS or MND? ALS stands for amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It is a motor neuron disease, and therefore in some countries better known as MND. In the U.S., the disease is also known as Lou Gehrig's disease, after a famous baseball player who died of ALS. ALS is a neurologic disorder that causes increasing muscle weakness and eventually paralysis, which, in most cases, is fatal. Our brain sends signals through our nervous system to make our muscles move. ALS affects the motor neurons that carry these signals. The neurons in the brain and the spinal cord degenerate and die, causing the muscles to gradually weaken and the brain to lose control over voluntary muscle movement. This leads to all sorts of problems, such as increasing loss of mobility in the limbs and difficulties with speech, swallowing, and even breathing. ALS is an irreversible and progressive disease. Patients usually die within 3 to 5 years after diagnosis, primarily due to failure of the respiratory muscles. Each year, 1 to 2 people per 100,000 are diagnosed with ALS. Scientists don't yet know how or why the disease develops, and unfortunately there is no cure or treatment today. It is currently only possible to slow down the progression of the disease. In other words, a lot of money is needed to fund ALS research. So, when you pour a bucket of ice water over your head, don't forget to also make a donation.